welcome to the Pages of Light podcast, your destination for discussions of popular fantasy and science fiction novels from a Christian worldview. My name is Tyler, aka Varum, and with me, as always, is Gabriel, aka the Quarantine Quartermaster. Welcome back to the podcast. How you doing today?
Oh, doing good. Long day of training at work, but I'm ready to podcast tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. So make sure you guys follow us on social media. We're on all the different platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads if you want to see what I'm reading and what's coming up on the podcast. And then you can also head over to our website, pagesoflight.com, and check out all the stuff happening over there. So in this episode, we're going to be continuing our discussion of Promise of Blood, Book 1 of the Powder Mage trilogy by Brian McClellan. You can check out part 1 of the episode, went up probably a week or so before this one. So you can hear a discussion of the beginning of the book there, because in this episode we're going to be finishing the second half of the book and then giving you our final thoughts on it, and then talk a little bit about some thoughts for book 2, what we expect to happen. I can't remember. You've read the whole trilogy though, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I'll
give you my thoughts, and Gabe will try not to ruin anything for me.
Yep.
Gabe will just have these weird smirks on his face because he knows either I've guessed something correctly or I'm like completely off base and have no idea what I'm talking about. So
it's kind of like I was saying in like The Great Hunt. Like I really enjoy the books, but then like a few years go by and it just like it wipes my memory. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like reading it for the first time sometimes. I know some big plot points, but sometimes it's just like new story-ish.
Yeah, especially when you read a lot of fantasy and science fiction, like you kind of like your mind shifts to like, okay, this is the next story that I'm going to focus on. And so you kind of like you lose all of the small little details over time. You'll like remember the big things that happen, but especially in like the Wheel of Time, like I'm not going to remember all the small details from The Great Hunt or The Eye of the World whenever we're reading book 10, in like 3 years from now.
It's kind of like, binge watching Netflix.
Sure.
People do that. They like get on there and they like binge all 10 episodes in a season, and then they get to season 2. They're like, what happened in season 1? Like that's like how I feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. And to kick it off, as always, we're going to be doing a favorite quote, something that we found in the book that we thought was interesting, or was some words of wisdom, or whatever it is. Gabe, do you want to kick us off this time? I think I went first last time.
Sure. Yeah. So mine is Adamat's observation when he arrives at the villa of the Archdiocese. And he says, "It was said that the Archdiocese was much more a man of pleasures than a man of Kresimir. Yet it wasn't that the way of the church these days? Oh, there were genuine priests, men who loved Kresimir and fellow man who toiled for peace and brotherhood. But Charlemagne and men of his type were far more common. Their love of women, gold, and power burned in them like a fever." So one of the places that I hear the word is a YouTube channel called The Bible Project. And I watched one on like sin and how we fell out of grace with God and having false gods. And the 3 that they kind of talked about were kind of identified here. He says women, gold, and power. And in that particular video, I forget the title of the video, the ancient peoples worshipped like military power, money, and sex and women and stuff. So that just, I don't know if you get this, but I feel like when I am tuned into God will send me messages from the most I will have a content of God coming to me from like our church, from Bible studies, from Bible Project on YouTube, and like the daily readings in the Bible. And if God wants me to hear something, I feel like it comes at me in 3 different ways. Like if I get a message like 3 different times from 3 different sources that are unconnected, I'm just like, okay, God wants me to pay attention to this. And I think that's a shift that's happened in me over, I've said my real Christian life didn't start in high school when I was like, head of like the church group for the young kids and everything. It started when I actually started following God and sacrificing and like my behaviors to him and sanctifying my behavior. And since then, I've definitely felt God's Spirit talking to me through these different channels and everything. So, when I read, so this was a quote I just picked out on my second read through of this book. I didn't have it through the first read through, but just the fact that it was just almost a straight parallel from what came out of the Bible Project. I thought it was interesting that, Brian McClellan used these three things, which were exactly the three things that old societies fell to as false gods. So I thought that was an interesting parallel that happened.
Yeah. So it's like they're people of the church, but they're prioritizing a bunch of other things besides like actually following what God says.
And for those of you listening, I'm doing air quotes, people of the church, because you should be looking to the word and trying to live the way God wants you to. And there were the Pharisees who were false priests and proclaiming that they were, telling people that they need to follow God. And that kind of reminds me of like Manhooch in the first episode where, he's eating dinners that would feed, 50, 60 people. And he's just, living it up versus like being a good king and saying, like, oh, I need to help the people below me. I need to have a servant's heart. So this particular quote took me there.
Yeah, and even like with Manhooch, like he's supposed to be, and even in our own history, like like a lot of monarchies were supposedly like established by God. I'm putting that in quotes. Like God has like ordained this person to be king, but they do nothing that is even related to doing what God would want them to do. So they're like using the excuse of like, oh, God said that I'm the king, but I'm not going to do anything that he says that I should do. So it's like just a bunch of hypocrisy from, either the person in power or people just from the church in general. So,
like a bunch of petulant children.
Yeah. I mean, my quote is kind of in a similar vein. So my quote is, it's a short one. It says, just because something is church dogma does not make it true. And that's Prime Lector to talking to Tamas. I think that's during the St. Adam's festival towards the end of the book. And I just like this quote because it's something just that's important to remember whenever you're like in church world or you're trying to, like, you're listening to church people talk about their traditions and things that the church has always done for, decades, centuries, whatever it is. Just the fact that just because something's always been done a certain way does not mean that it's a biblical thing to do, and that we should be testing the things that we hear from people or all kind of traditions with what the Bible actually says. And an example of this that I thought of was like Martin Luther questioning the Catholic Church with a lot of the practices that they had been doing for centuries and nobody really questioned. And then Martin Luther was basically like, what I'm reading in the Bible does not match up with what you are saying that we should be doing, and what you're saying is true and what the Bible actually says. So that doesn't mean that all church traditions are bad. That just means that we shouldn't do them just because they're a tradition. We should do them because they're a biblical thing to do. We should just make sure that we check all of those things ourselves before we just kind of like jump in blindly, in a sense. So,
Tyler, I really like the way that you said we need to like test our faith and like apply like the word that we are reading to the practices that we're going through. That made me think of, Martin Luther, like you said, he nailed the 95 Theses to the wooden door of the church and challenged the practice of indulgences. And basically that indulgences was the practice of paying off people's sins to the church. Like
after they were dead.
After they were dead. They're like, oh yeah, let's just get that person out of purgatory. Let's throw money at the church and that problem will go away.
And the whole thing with that was that supposedly the Catholic Church had to like in with God, like they were the intermediary And the whole thing with the Reformation is like, you don't need an intermediary between you and God. You can just go to God directly, right? So that was kind of the thing there.
Yeah. So yeah, I like that observation. Well done.
Awesome. As always, if you have a favorite quote, leave a comment and why you liked it, how it spoke to you, all those different things. We'd love to dialogue with you down there in the comments. So now let's move on to some of the story elements. So I think we'll start with Tamas. So Tamas and Adamat's storylines are kind of intertwined. So we may go back and forth between Tamas and Adamat's stuff. So just be aware of that. So basically, I think where we left off on the last podcast was that Tamas had somebody tried to assassinate him. And
he hulked out and he kills the warden.
Yeah, he kills the warden. But in the process, one of his dogs dies. It's very sad.
Hitler.
Yes. I always hate to see a dog die. One of my childhood dogs, we had to put it down recently. My family did, so it's just no fun to have to watch your pet die. But oh well, that's just the way of the world, I guess. But so I think then the next big plot point is that they go on this great hunt. I think it's like a tradition that Man Hooch used to do every year, who was the previous king after he was before he was overthrown and killed. And so basically they just go on this like great hunt where they take their dogs and everybody goes out, and I don't remember specifically what they were hunting. It was probably deer or elk or something like that. I don't think it was actually mentioned, but
yeah, I think there is a tradition in like the British culture, like they release like I'm blanking now, but it's
I'm
like,
thinking of the scene in Game of Thrones
foxes.
Whenever they go on the hunt and King Baratheon, I'm blanking on his first name for some reason, but he gets killed at his hunt. That's a similar
but
type
I think
scene.
but I think there's a degree of like, I don't know, if staging is the right word, like they release certain animals that are going to be pursued by and then it's a competition of how well you've trained your animal to track those animals. And Tamas had really done well with his. And what's funny about this year's hunt is that all the royals are dead, so they're
most of them, not all of them, but yeah,
most of them, but they're like saying how like basically people who are not far from being like commoners and peasants are showing up, and they're barely in like the hunt uniform, and Tamas is kind of looking around like, look at all these people. It doesn't feel like the hunt that I'm used to, but he's like, that guy's not even wearing the right colors, but he's here.
Well, I mean, Tamas has himself to blame. He's the one who killed all of them, so I don't know why he's complaining.
Yeah.
So basically they go on this hunt, and I think it's probably good for them. Just there's been a lot of craziness happening, and I think it was good for Tamas to kind of get out into the open air, into the world, just to like, reset his mind in a sense. And I think that's something that we just as human beings need. Like we need time to just leave our routines and the things that we're always doing and the things that stress us out, and we need some time to just kind of reset our minds. And that's why we have vacations and just walks on the weekend, or whatever it is, going for a hike or whatever. Those are just good times. But in the process of this hunt, there is some nefarious conniving happening in the background. And there's like this interesting, like, it seems like there's there's like a cross, and then there's like a double cross, and like Tamas isn't quite sure who's the one who's actually betraying him, because they get out a ways, and then they're trying to like catch up back to where all the other hunters are, or where the dogs were, I think. And then this one, I think his name was Rise. Was it what his name was?
Riser.
He was like their guide or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, I'll take you on this secret path on the way back, and it'll be quicker." And so they start going, and then I think it's Olam who's like shouldn't we be going some other direction? I think you're leading us in a weird way here. And that's because he's leading them to a trap. And their party gets surrounded by all of these people with, I think they had bows and arrows.
Yep.
And
so the powder mages couldn't.
yeah, so Tamas couldn't access any of his powder or the powder on anybody else who had a gun. So, which is very smart because they knew exactly where they were going to be and who was going to be there and who they were dealing with. So they were very smart to plan it the way that they did. I'm trying to remember the person. Yeah, you can. You want to pick up?
So I think it's Riser is the person who is orchestrating the capture of Tamas, and he is affiliated with the Wings of Adam, who is the mercenary group under Lady Wenceslav, and he captures Tamas, and I think it wasn't him in the group, and he's like distinctive because he has like an eye patch or something over one eye, and so he's captured, and he is taken just Tamas, and he's forced the other people, I think Rickard Tumbler and Andraus the Reeve and Charlemund were some of the counselors that were present with Tamas when he was captured, and Olam, and he dismisses all of them, and he takes just Tamas, and he's just like looking over his shoulder. He's unsure of like what's going on. And then all of a sudden, Tamas picks up that there's a privilege, like, in the woods. And this comes as news to Riser, who's like, I don't know about a privilege. And so the privilege is gaining on them. And it's just really confusing, like, why Riser has captured Tamas. And then in the end, Riser reveals that he's captured Tamas to enlist his aid, and he wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't arouse suspicion in the Wings of Adam that Riser was going to get help. But essentially, a family member of his or all of his family had been captured and was being used as like leverage over to control what he's doing. And Riser wanted to get Tamas to use his army to help get these people back, so he wouldn't be. And that's so that's what's going on. And then also within this privilege is Nixlaus, who is the Kez privilege, who Tamas hates because he beheaded Erica, his wife, and he picked him up by the throat and threw him into the Yahtzee River in the first one. And apparently he's riding on some warden's back, and he comes in and starts blowing things up with his privileged powers, and Tamas is hiding behind a rock, and the rock basically explodes, and Tamas blacks out.
Yeah. So he gets captured by Nixlaus, and he's taken to some building or some structure or tent or something like that, some camp. And whenever the rock exploded, it like messed up a bunch of his leg. But Nixlaus had some talented healer, probably some privileged healer available, who patched up his leg. But there's a twist with the leg getting patched up, is that the person put in some kind of, it was like a gold star inside of his leg. That it touches the bone? Is that the thing that it has to do to cut him off from his powder mage abilities?
Close, yeah. So it was touching the bone, I think, because they wanted it deep in there, but they put in a 5-pointed star, and the gold has to be in his bloodstream. So like every time Tamas walks or moves around, it will reopen the wound and continuously pour gold into the bloodstream, and that's how he is deprived of his sorcery. So, and then Nixlaus says, "You've been cured, Tamas. You've been cured."
Yeah, Nixlaus is kind of he seems like a very arrogant, like,
arrogant's a good word.
I'm stronger than you and I will defeat you. He just has like that pompous kind of attitude about him.
He's also got kind of like a Third Reich sort of like prejudice against powder mages.
Yeah, like, we're going to cleanse you, because he thinks like the privileged are, like the better species or the better magical being, as it were, and the powder mages are like deformed or something, or like they're not true magicians in a sense.
And he says something like they're having a discussion in a carriage after the surgery, and Tamas has an emotional moment where he just feels the loss of his power, and he cries, and Niklaus kind of leaves him to it. And I think Tamas describes himself as a broken old man. And then they're having a discussion in the carriage ride where it seems like they're being pursued, and Tamas is saying, Niklaus says that, Tamas, you could have been a formidable ally in like another life. And he was like, well, and then Niklaus was saying, the only thing that separates us is you're a powder mage and I'm a privilege, and your kind needs to be cleansed, and you're like basically the black sheep of all the magical beings. And Tamas says, well, I'm also Adran and you're Kez. And like going into like the political side of it, like I have my devotion and my patriotism to my country of Adro, and you are of Kez descents. And Niklaus is like, meh, well, that's not really a thing. And he's very much focused on like Tamas being a powder mage.
Sure.
And then he also has that you use the word arrogant, like, yeah, Kez is going to take over Adro. Like that will happen. Like it's a foregone conclusion in his mind. And so, yeah, that's that was I found it interesting that he hates the powder mages so much that's what he focuses on, and not on on like the part being from different countries. And I think that that's something that as Christians we are always as humans we are always like, I feel like it's natural for us to just stereotype people and to think of people in boxes, and you have to really work at undoing that mindset and having the thought that everyone is God, everyone is made in God's image, and everyone deserves like this grace and love and
individual respect
for a person. And then some people are just so blinded, and a lot of times it's not even like, so I used to teach psychology, and one of the things that we learned is that prejudice is not present in kids. It is a learned thing. Like if you put a bunch of like 2, 3, and 4-year-olds in a room, it, like regardless of race or the way that the skin looks, they will all play together. But if you are raised in a racist or prejudiced, if you have those influences in your life, that can be bred into you. And I feel that a lot of people didn't even have a choice. You don't have a choice in who your parents are and the environment that you're brought up in. And to be a Christian, you have to rewind that tape and say like you said, go towards that individual respect of people, and kind of challenge your own thought process. Again, something we've already talked about. Like we have to go back to the Bible. We have to see what God wants for us, and we have to undo those worldly things, those prejudices and those biases, if we truly want to like sanctify our behavior and start living for God the way He intends us to.
Yeah, that's a good word. Thanks for sharing that. So Tamas, I think their plan was to take Tamas with this carriage to the docks, and they were going to sail away back to Kez, and they were trying to do this really quickly so that they wouldn't be tracked and caught by Olam, who is because Tamas had sent Olam away before he got captured and said, hey, you need to go, you need to get out of here, and you need to figure out how to track me or figure out who the traitor is, all that kind of stuff. So Olam is hot on the trail, and I think there was a scene where like the carriages started getting like destroyed, and basically they just caught him, and Olam was able to figure out where they were, and he's able to rescue Tamas, which is great. I like Olam. He's just he's loyal.
How can you not like?
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And he even treats Nyla really nice, even though Nyla's plotting to kill Tamas.
Yeah.
They have like a little relationship, Nyla and Olam, and then Nyla's like, I don't want to see you again because my mission is more important.
Yeah. Yeah, she's worried that she's like a royalist, and and Olam's over there like, he's like, Nyla says, you haven't tried to force yourself on me like, you know, many of the men would do, and Olam just kind of smirks and he's like, when the time's right, I won't have to.
Yeah, that was such a great quote.
I was just like, oh, Olam, you are, and she like punches him, but she gets all red in the face about it. I thought that was a really cute little scene there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Olam's just like, he's just like supremely confident in himself because he's just a true gentleman. I mean, he may be a chain smoker, but he's very loyal. He doesn't need sleep. He's always around. He's dependable. He's going to do the right thing. You know, very stand-up character.
Yeah. I should have picked.
Not love Olam.
I should have picked that as my favorite quote. Thanks for bringing that up. That I do remember that scene. That was great. I like that scene.
I just listened to it when I was cooking dinner tonight, so it was fresh on my mind.
But so Tamas gets rescued, and he's in a lot of pain, obviously, because he has that gold star in his leg, and so every time he moves, it's like really painful for him because it keeps reopening the wound. So he has to go to one of the healers, and he's like, I need you to open my leg back up. And that guy's like, I don't think that's a very good idea. He's like, but there's a gold star in there. He like explains the whole thought process of why this has to happen. And I think he's basically like, I can't guarantee that if I do this, that you're going to be able to move your leg anymore. Like,
yeah.
And then like, he does get it done, and he does survive it, but I think he's still got like a serious like limp, and he's not really that agile towards, at least for the whole rest of the book, because I guess there's not that much time that passes between them.
His leg was basically like destroyed.
Yeah.
Like it was like all the bones were crushed and broken and stuff. It wasn't a little injury on top of like the star, but like his leg was also just like demolished by the exploding rock in the forest.
So I'm not sure how much that will play in the later books, if that's something that he still has to deal with. But yeah, his leg is certainly messed up, but he does get his powder mage abilities back, which is what that's really all he cared about in the end, that he was able to get his powder mage abilities back, which is good for him, because I think that for him that is like a core part of his identity. So having that like suddenly ripped away from you was pretty devastating to him. So I'm sure he was very happy to have that piece of him restored.
Yeah, that's why he was willing to, risk death, because he was just like, I want it back. When without it, I'm not me.
Yeah. So the next big thing is, I think whenever Riser had captured them, he was talking about who the betrayers were within the wings of Adam. And I think this is where he mentions that it's Brigadier Barat who is the traitor. Am I remembering that correctly, of how he gets revealed to be kind of the one that's bad? Because he's also been sleeping with Lady Wenceslav, which is why he has like a lot of sway with her. So he's able to like get things done that he thinks needs to be done, because she kind of just trusts him in a very intimate way. So so it's revealed that he is the traitor, and so Tamas brings Barat in to basically just like question him, and just to say like, yeah, I know you're the traitor. And he also has another brigadier in there, Sabastanian, who's a pretty young. I think he's one of the youngest brigadiers, I think they said, where he's like a really great soldier and
20s,
very loyal. And Tamas brings him in before he brings in Brigadier Barat, and he says something about like, I want you to go behind this
changing
screen or whatever, and then just listen to what's about to happen. And so then he brings Brigadier Barat in, and he just starts to question him, and he basically confesses to, you know, what he was trying to do. And then Sebastian just walks out and just shoots him. So
yep,
that was kind of a cool scene. I don't know if he had like the justification to do that, or if that is what Tamas expected him to do.
I think he just wanted a witness in the Wings of Adam to be there during that.
Yeah.
And I think Brigadier Barrett saw him behind the screen, and Tamas even recognized that he was grandstanding and kind of saying his piece. And then we learned that Sabastanian is going to be drummed out of the Wings of Adam. It's like against their code to, you know, kill anyone regardless of their crime.
Yep.
And so Tamas is like, offer him a place in our army as soon as he's dismissed from the Wings of Adam, because he recognizes the talent. So
that is one thing. You know, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say that that's. You think you're gonna find out who the traitor is when Riser like captures him, because you're like, okay, this is gonna link to, you know, the traitor behind Tamas. So it's like, this whole other subplot going on in the main storyline, and then you're like, oh no, we don't know who the traitor is still, because this is all going on within the Wings of Adam, and more about their infighting that's happening, and not so much about the infighting happening within the country, just within their ranks. Yeah.
So it wasn't that Lady Wenceslav was the traitor. It was somebody beneath her that was infighting within that group. So in this book, there's the plans within plans quote. I saw that in the book, and I just thought of you, because you were saying that in our Dune podcast, like the schemes and the plans within plans and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of that in this book. But one thing for like Tamas is that he is really good at recognizing talent and protecting that talent, and really like cultivating that and giving people places of authority where they can reach their full potential. Like with Sebastian, and he knows that he's going to get kicked out of the Wings of Adam, and so he's like, okay, he's going to get kicked out. He's going to have a place. He's going to give him like I don't remember the rank he was going to give him, but a pretty high rank. So that, because he knew that he was going to be someone who could handle that role and be loyal. I just like that about Tamas. He's a really good leader in that way.
Yeah, and that's also biblical, just recognizing people for their strengths and utilizing them that way.
Your spiritual gifts.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's like you said, it's good leadership. And then being on the receiving end of having abilities, and like I think of my divorce, and I think about the job that I lost, and how I have really great fruits of the Spirit, but like paired with the wrong person, they just die on the vine. I remember talking to my parents about, you know, they asked me, when this was close to the time when I decided to get a divorce, they said, you know, like, what are happening to your fruits of the Spirit? And I'm a very social person. I'm good at leadership. I'm good at working with people. I'm a teacher by trade. I like to teach people things. Mm-hmm. And I just told them flat out that they were dying on the vine. And that was kind of my signal, like this is the time for me to get out. And I think if I had been further in my faith journey, I would have stayed in the relationship and tried to work through it. That's what I love about Jenna, my wife. We are on the journey together, and when things aren't going right, we are turning to God, and we're looking for His ways to do things. Whereas I was trying to do things that the family that I had married into had like told me, like, this is what God wants you to do in this situation. And it was more of like, they were telling me what God wanted, and it wasn't like my wife and I trying to figure out what God wanted for us. It was more like her and her mom saying, like, we think God wants you to do this, and then me saying, like, okay, I'll try and do that, and then that just wasn't working out. And and so, and I am where I am with God, and it's funny because I knew that I wanted my wife to get me closer to God because I knew I didn't have a strong relationship. And it's funny because I have a much stronger relationship with God, but it's because of the divorce that I really had to, like, I just remember being at the lowest point in my life, just like praying to God for help and crying out to him and saying, like, I can't do this on my own. Like, please help me. And, the conversation that I had with my ex-wife right after that, just went so much smoother than like conversations had gone for weeks. And then like that was like, I was like in this little chapel that was on our property about a 5-minute walk from the house, just praying to God. And I just remember that being a very low point in my life. So my happy thought is my ex-wife did bring me to God very closely, but not in the way I expected it to happen.
Yeah, there's that. I don't remember where it is, but there's that passage. God uses all things for the good of those who love him. So all things includes good things, includes bad things, includes hard things, easy things, includes all things for the good of those who love him. So you might not know where you're going in the moment, but you know, God knows where the story ends and where it's going to take you.
And you know, the hardship that I went through, you know, Jenna and I were fortunate enough to share our marriage story at church. We've been invited to share it again for the next round of Re-Engage people this spring, because it was impactful when we shared it the first time. And you know, every time that I go through something that's been tough and difficult, I always try and think, what would God want me to do in this situation? And then the hard part is trying to live that out, trying to swallow your pride and to do the things that God wants you to do, and then taking those hardships and bearing witness to other people. Like, I've been down that road, I've had to do this, and this is what I think God wants you to know through my experience. I can only speak through what I've gone through, but just know that people have been through things similar to what you've gone through, and I think that's given Jenna and I a platform to speak to people, and we just do it very candidly, and people were very receptive to our story. So God, like you said, can use all things to his good and to his will.
Yeah. Very good. So we had Sebastian kill Brigadier Barat, and I think very shortly after that scene, I think it's Mahali comes in for some reason. I think he's there to give him some kind of food or something because he's been sick or something like that. And so Mahali comes in to help him and get him some food. And then Charlemund comes in as well because he's upset that Charlemund basically thinks that Mahali is a blasphemer and that he thinks that he is claiming to be somebody who he isn't, and that the church can't allow that to happen. And so he's basically, I'm going to take Mahali away, and we're going to send him back to where he came from, back into his
like a sane asylum.
Yeah, like the asylum or whatever, where he's supposed to be. And I love this scene because I think Mahali just like tosses him across the room, and then Olam and or is it Adamat? I think Adamat is there as well. I think there's like a whole crew of people that are just like,
Olam, Adamat, what did you... Tamas, Mahali,
yeah, they're like, what did you guys see? Oh yeah, he just tripped down the stairs. Oh yeah, that's what I thought happened. I hope he feels better later.
They're just and like, Tamas's surgeon is there too because he's like, yeah, give him something that'll mess up his memory.
Oh yeah, that was a great scene too. He's like, cyanide.
Yeah, he's like, that'll cure it. The best part of that scene I thought was when Mahali is holding his ladle like a sword, and like he's like, he's like telling Charlemagne like, you get out of here, and like don't, he's like, I don't want to hear any of it from you, and then he just like knocks him out flat. And then he's got like a bruised face later when like Adamat is interrogating him, and Adamat's like, yeah, I saw you fall, it was a real terrible thing. And he's like, oh, I can't believe you brought that up.
I think it's funny because Charlemagne is such like a stuck-up church person. He deserves it. He does deserve it.
Yeah, he does.
But yeah, that was a funny scene. And again, another thing with Tamas is like he is willing to protect the people that he thinks are important to his cause. Like he wants people to be loyal to him, and he knows how to do that by protecting them or giving them positions of power or doing things for them that can help them reach their potential. And so this is just another thing where Tamas is going to defend Mahali because he's basically keeping his army fed and morale really high, and he's doing so many great things for the army. And he's like, that's irreplaceable. Like, I can't lose that. And there's like this back and forth between like, is it wise for him to go against the church? Because it said later that Tamas, like the church is one part of his council that he's actually worried about because they have a lot of power and they could wipe him out pretty quickly if they decided that they needed to do that. And so that's a big decision for him to go against what Charlemagne wants to do. And I don't know. It's just another good scene with Tamas protecting Mahali there.
Mahali is like the comic relief throughout the book. I feel like every time he comes in, he's got this larger than life attitude, like, welcome to the feast, Tamas. Oh, it's great to have you.
So the next big scene with Tamas is we have St. Adam's festival, and there's this scene where Tamas is sleeping, and he has this bad dream, and he wakes up, and then he comes out and he sees basically like the whole city like gathered in the town square for this big party. And he's like, what the heck is going on around here? I didn't say this. I didn't agree to any of this. And so he goes down there, and Mahali's like, oh yeah, I told them that you said this is what we were doing. And he's like, all right, I guess this is what we're doing. I guess so. But like Mahali is he seems to always like do the right thing, I guess. Like he's always trying to make people happy and like fulfill their needs. And I have this quote from him here that I really liked about him not only meeting like people's physical needs because he's a really good chef and he cooks and he makes really good food for people, but he also wants to meet like their emotional and their spiritual needs as human beings.
I chose this quote too. I didn't even see it until after I decided to go with my other one about Charlemagne being a thing. But yeah, we chose the same quote.
Awesome. Again. Well, I'm glad that it is a good one. So this is what it says. This is Mahali talking to Tamas. And he says, the people are hungry. The people need to be fed. They need bread and wine and soup and meat. But not just that. They need friendship. They need companionship. They need love and brotherhood. You gorged them on the blood of the nobility. They drank but were not filled. They ate of hatred and grew hungrier. Your intentions were, well, not pure, but just. Justice is never enough. I will put things right. I will feed all of Adro. It is what they need.
Definitely some biblical overtones here. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, so you have, at the beginning, you have the bread and the wine that, like, mirrors the communion, where we drink the wine that represents the blood of Christ, and then we also drink the bread, or eat the bread, which represents the body of Christ, and that's how we remember his sacrifice for us. And there's also just, like, the idea of, like you don't need just physical things to sustain yourself. You need higher level things to really have joy in your life and to be fulfilled. And that Jesus speaks to that as well with the woman at the well, where he says, I'll give you water that when you drink, you'll never thirst again, in a sense. And so there's like this idea of there's something that Jesus can give you that meets not just your physical need, but also your deeper spiritual need for a savior, and for someone to love you, and someone who has sacrificed himself for you. And Mahali is kind of like this. He's almost like a Christ-like figure, because he's like Adam reborn. Kind of seems like he's kind of like a son of God type figure, where he's come to like restore like the people's need for not just food, but for higher level things. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think?
So when you're saying that, so first of all, I absolutely agree. I'm going to touch on some of the things that I think are biblical, but just back to some psychology. If you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so I just wanted to jump into that as a little side quest here.
Yes, love a side quest.
So at the base, you have your physiological needs or biological needs, and that's just food, water, shelter, clothing, and they don't say it here, but also sex would fall into that, because that's needed for the species to continue. Obviously, if there's no offspring, then the species can't go on. Then you have the next level, which is safety, and then here it has like health, employment, property, family, and then the next level is love and belonging, friendship, family, intimacy, sense of connection. Then there's esteem, which is the fourth level, confidence, achievement, respect for others, and the need to have a unique individual. And then finally, the fifth level is the self-actualization. This is like morality, creativity, spontaneity, experience of purpose and meaning in one's life. And so I think what you're saying is like we do have the basic needs, and trust me, after a good meal, like everyone's feeling better. Like if you sat down and you ate a meal and it like tasted really good and you have a full belly at the end, that makes everyone happy. There's a reason they say the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
That's right.
If you can feed me consistently, I'm going to be very happy. But then there is the stuff beyond that. Like we aren't just called to eat, drink, and that's it. Like we want to have a sense of purpose. We want to have a sense of belonging, and then at the higher end of things, to have that spiritual relationship with God. And like you said, I was also going to mention the woman at the well, and just saying how you can drink of the things of life, but they're not going to fill you up. And that brings me back to your quote, where you said, where it says they drank, of the blood of the nobility, but they were not. And then he says your intentions, well, not pure, but just. And so I think that call, like it was a just action, because, Tamas is a servant of the people, which is what Manhooch was not. Manhooch lived for himself. He chose the hedonistic path, and Tamas sees the needs of the people, and he wants better for them, and he acted in a way, as a military commander did, that he wanted to have people see justice happen. And then it's not pure, because God would never say to kill anyone. I think that the way that I don't know, and it's hard, because I don't think God wants us to live in those government systems that are oppressive like that. But I also don't think that there's a clear path in the Bible of how like we should take over those, like to remove those people who are in power, like out of power. And maybe it's through like just having people who are of God like move into those positions of power. But then in a monarchy, that might just not happen. So it is tough to know what God wants us to do in those situations. But yeah, I thought that was a great quote, and yeah, definitely want to jump into those biblical themes and side quest, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. I think that one phrase that's interesting is that justice is never enough. It's interesting because like God is just and he is justice, and he will bring justice at the very end, whenever Satan is finally defeated, and all of those things in Revelation happen. But I think that kind of speaks to like having the justice for Satan, like that isn't the full like piece of God's plan. There's also like there's the justice portion, and then there's like the restoration portion of like the people who believe in God being restored to right fellowship with him for eternity. So I think that kind of speaks to like you can have your justice, but you also need some kind of like restoration portion. And so in this book we have like Tamas does the justice portion, but he doesn't do the other portion where he's not giving like the people, like he's not restoring like the way of life that the people had previously. And so there's this disconnect almost where like he does half of it right, but he hasn't gotten to the other portion yet. And that might just be like, yeah, he's fighting a war and all this kind of stuff, but Mahali's just kind of
lots of things going on.
Yeah, Mahali's just kind of speaking to saying like, you did like the right thing. I'm putting that in quotes. Like you did the just thing, but your intentions weren't pure. But you need to go a step farther and fulfill other things and do more things for the people to really be seen as like to be somebody that people actually love and want to follow. So yeah, I think it was a really good quote. And Mahali is kind of like the comic relief character, but he's also got some good wisdom there. Just speaking to like people need more things than just food and water.
And we haven't even talked about the big reveal for Mahali.
True. But I think this also speaks to like just Christian community. Like we need friendship, we need companionship, we need brotherhood, we need love. Like those are all things that you should be finding in some kind of Christian community, whether it's a local church or just a group of like your neighbors doing a Bible study or something like that. So there's lots of levels to this kind of quote where, and it speaks to those biblical ideals of, you being in fellowship with God, and you also being in fellowship with other like-minded believers who are pursuing the same path and trying to be just like Jesus as much as they possibly can. So
yeah, the scripture that comes to mind is that iron sharpens iron as one brother sharpens another, just to be in fellowship, because everyone has blind spots. You may think that you are doing things the way God intends you to, and you could be wrong, and you need someone that you can bounce ideas off of and talk to, and that will lead you down the right path and challenge you to again dip back into your Bible and to figure it out for yourself, and not just say, oh, I think God wants me to do this, and just kind of perpetuate that belief without actually challenging it first.
Yeah. Indeed. So you mentioned the reveal of Mahali, and so basically we have this scene here where he's talking to Mahali during the festival, and then there's some time that passes with the festival. I think it's been going on for a few days at this point. I think it's not like just a one-day thing, if I'm remembering correctly, because there's some stuff that's happening with Adamat in behind the scenes where he's still kind of trying to figure out who the traitor is. But there's a scene at this festival where the Black Street Barbers, this like kind of underground like assassin type group, they basically just go into this festival and start just cutting down random people with they have like these little razors that they use to just, I assume, cut people's throats.
Yeah.
And it seems like a pretty gruesome scene here.
Yeah, like they just go in and start cutting people. But their MO is that they kill people and then don't leave a trace. Like,
Yeah.
and then they do wholesale slaughter too. Like, they go into a house, every single breathing person in there dies, and then they are whisked away without a trace. And they are directly tied to Rickard Tumbler, and that's like the group that he has under his thumb and uses them to carry out his dirty work if need be. And then so that's one of the reasons why people start thinking it's Rickard Tumbler as the traitor.
Yeah.
And then so the big reveal is Prime Lecter shows up, and Tamas is like going through the crowd and looking for Mahali, and Adamat has confronted the Black Street Barbers earlier, and he finds out that they have been contracted to not only kill him, which I think we will visit in a few minutes, but also to kill Mahali, and paid like an exorbitant amount of money, like hundreds of thousands of crowners, to do this publicly, to do it dirty, and
which is not really the Black Street Barbers thing. They do things in the shadows.
Yeah, and stealthy. And so, but for this amount of money, they're gonna do it. And so Prime Lecter shows up, and all of a sudden he's like putting on his privileged gloves. He's like getting ready for battle, because they want to protect Mahali. And apparently during St. Adam's Festival, he's been channeling through his cooking, through all this food, and he's been weaving sorcery into Adro and healing the souls of people and helping them. And Prime Lecter basically says he is a god. He is Adam Reborn. And
I love the conversation he has with Tamas before this whole reveal happens, where he's asking him questions about Mahali, like, what if he is really Adam Reborn? Like, asking all these probing questions, kind of trying to get Tamas to see the truth in a way. So I don't know. I liked, and you also get the reveal with Prime Lecter that he's a Pretty. He's one of like the original, the OG magical beings in the world, who is like Julene and Rosalia. Yes, Rosalia. Yeah, I like that scene between them.
Yeah. And so he like throws on his gloves, and he like creates this avenue like through the chaos, like all the people dying, and it's just like it's like the parting of the Red Sea, and it's like people are like pressed up against this invisible glass wall, and he clears a way for Tamas to get in and go support Mahali. But Mahali is a god, and like they say that where a normal privilege is like standing next to a candle producing heat, like Mahali like unveils his god powers, and it's like opening the doors to a blast furnace, and it's just like makes it seem so much more powerful than
because he's been like masking it this whole time.
So he's, he has that ability, and then all of a sudden like Tamas is running towards him, and he hears this like I don't know if you're picking up on it's just like a
little pops
sound. Little pops, and he was like, there was a Black Street Barber just right there, I saw him, but now there's like this red mist. And then like just slow, like Mahali is just like
it's like
disintegrating.
It's like the snap at the end of Infinity War, just
poof,
everybody just
like
disintegrates
slowly. Like,
I love
just the Black Street Barbers.
I love this the thing Mahali says. He's like, they didn't need to exist anymore, or something like that, where he's like, I just they don't need to be there.
Remove them from existence. And
yes,
but he was a good god, and he's like, they felt no pain. But
sure.
Prime Lecter says that he's been channeling this whole week, and channeling is what allows a privileged or a magical being to bring magic into the world. And so the spells that he has been casting and channeling for weeks would all be for nothing. But basically Mahali is like bolstering the people, preparing them for what's to come, and like giving them all the food that they need, tending to the fellowship needs that they have. And his food is kind of, and Nyla even comments on it, that she didn't like Mahali's food because it made her a little bit less angry every single day. She's like, I was a little less committed to killing Tamas. So she's like, I bought my bread from another store, and it just wasn't the same. I had to like go back to.
he's
Mahali's
basically like
cooking.
preparing them for the war. He's like doing everything he can to make them as happy as possible, as physically strong as possible, and because he knows that his. So I guess the other portion of this reveal is that, and I think this is what Prime Lecter is telling Tamas before this scene happens. He says that there's actually 10 gods, not just the one. There's Kresimir and his 9 brothers, and they're all kind of on the same level. I think Mahali says like Kresimir is like he's not a good god or something like that. He says something about him where he's like, I do things differently than my brother does, and whenever he comes, you're gonna need some help to combat what he is gonna be bringing down on the people.
Yeah, he said that Kresimir would find it easier to start from nothing than to like.
Yeah, he's just like gonna wipe everybody out. Yeah,
and that's that's very like human. Like, yeah, we'll just take everything out and start from scratch, and and then you have God's character, where he's going to destroy the city, and they're like, how many good people need to be in the city for like you not to destroy it? And they're like, is it 10? He's like, I wouldn't destroy it for 10. And then it goes down to 1. If there was one good person in the city, he would not destroy the city. Versus Kresimir, who says, I don't really care if there's good people here. We're just gonna wipe everyone out, and we'll just try again.
Yeah,
we'll just try again a little bit. So definitely glad that I don't worship Kresimir. That doesn't seem like a god I wanna.
Yeah, Kresimir is not the one to pick. So there's some stuff that happens behind the scenes with Adamat and some other different scenes that we'll talk about in a second, but basically it comes down to Adamat figures out that it's Charlemont who is the traitor, and so Tamas he basically goes to Charlemont's, I think it's called a villa, his villa, and he's gonna go up there and confront him basically and arrest him, and somehow he is warned of what's going to be happening, that Tamas is coming, and he's just ready for them to come, and so they kind of get up a ways closer to the villa, and then they just open fire on Tamas and his soldiers and all the people there, and it's another massacre, and a bunch of people get killed, and there's kind of like this final confrontation between the two. They kind of had this like truce for a little bit where they're gonna walk up to the villa and have a talk and figure out how they can resolve this semi peacefully. And they're using air rifles again to combat Tamas's powder mage abilities, so he's not able to ignite the guns that the other enemies are wielding and use them against them. So I like these little things where there's like powerful magic, but there's also counters to the powerful magic. You can use bows and arrows, you can use air rifles. There's the privileged who use a different type of magic. I love all the little kind of details and intricacies of the magic system to kind of give it some
checks and balances.
Yeah, checks and balances. That's a good way to phrase it, where it's like the powder mages aren't just like running rampant across, the whole world and nobody can stop them or whatever. So I like that part of the story. Yeah, I don't know. What did you think of the kind of the final confrontation here?
That was good. Charlemagne basically has like a small army inside of his villa, and he's prepared to fight. And then we have the showdown where Charlemagne shows off his great ability as a swordsman,
his duelist,
and he like cuts down Adamat, who's old inspector guy and out of shape, and Olim comes in, and he's his ferocity, he just like gets Charlemagne backed up, but then Charlemagne is just the consummate swordsman and starts basically adapting and learning Olam's style, and he starts in on him, and Olam is not, he's strong, he's powerful, but he just can't match Charlemagne, who is strong, powerful, and incredibly skillful at the same time.
Yep.
And then I forget how Charlemagne gets taken out. I believe he's fighting Tamas at the end there, and Tamas is like on his injured leg, and he's like in a powder trance, and I think they fight to the death there.
I think he's able to use some kind of powder charge to crack his sword and break it, and so that's how he's able to disarm him. And then he can, once he doesn't have his sword, he's not near as deadly as he would be. So after that, they kind of subdue him. There's also that scene before that when they're up in the villa and Nixlaus is in there, and I thought it was interesting. They put him. He's the privileged. So there's this villa, and there's all these people with these air rifles shooting out of the windows and stuff. And then you have the privileged Nixlaus up there, and he can kind of see through these. He's using these mirrors in a way where he can see where the shots are going, and he can kind of direct the shots so they hit. And it also protects him against getting shot by bullets himself. But I think there's some scene where Tamas basically is able to shoot something and shatter all of the mirrors and get him out of there. And he basically he like pierces his hands and messes up his, I think they're like glyphs or something on his hands that allow them to use their powers.
On the gloves.
Yeah, on the gloves
that they wear.
And so he basically has it so that he can't access his powers anymore. Which is kind of like a touche back to earlier in the book where Nixlaus had taken Tamas's powers away from him. And so now Tamas gets to do the same thing to him, which is, I'm sure, feels very good for Tamas, because of all the people that he doesn't like, Nixlaus might be at the top of the list.
He's at the top of the list, right up there with the King of Kez, whose name escapes me, but those two are at the top of the list. Ipoli, that's his name.
Yes. But yeah, so I thought that was a pretty cool scene. One thing that was sad was we have, whenever they're kind of hunkered down and trying to avoid the fire, Saban just gets taken out right in front of Tamas.
Yeah,
which Tamas is like, he's been like losing a bunch of friends throughout this whole process, throughout the whole book. He's been losing a lot of people that were close to him for a long time, which I'm sure over time just really starts to eat at him. Like questions like, is what I'm doing worth it? Like all these people giving their lives for the cause. Like, what if I fail? All of this was for nothing. All of those kind of things where, it's just war is, as somebody who's never been to war, like I can't really speak directly to how it is, but it seems like there's just not a lot of good can come to it.
War.
Yeah.
It's not something that I want to experience. It just seems so.
Yeah.
Just not like, I'm so glad that we've grown up in basically peace times. We've had like the Cold War and like everything has been on foreign soil. All the kind of military engagements during our lives been on foreign soil, so nothing on our home turf. I can't imagine just like having to ration food, like to give up our YouTube and podcast life to like hunker down and like hide with our families and worry about invading forces and being captured and put into concentration camps. Like that is just a reality that I hope never comes to America. We just
or
don't
anywhere
have to deal with that. Or anywhere. Just I just like, I can't imagine it for myself. That's why I say America. But I mean, there's injustice like that all across the planet because we live in a fallen world. We have it good here in the States. We have it really good, and we forget that sometimes. But I'm really thankful for the time period we've grown up in, because it has not been that bad in the course of human history.
It's true. We've had it pretty easy. Yeah, so I think
so
that's
jump
pretty
into
much
Adamat's story.
Yeah, I was gonna say that pretty much ends where ends Tamas's story, and then Adamat's story kind of intertwines with Tamas's a little bit. So Adamat is basically where we pick up with him is he has been investigating a lot of the council members, so he's been going to a bunch of different people. Lady Wenceslav, the Reeve, Ricard Tumbler, I'm blanking on one of the other people's names. And then the Charlemagne, of course. Yeah, the proprietor. And
spoken for by the eunuch.
Yeah. And there's also the scene after he's I think this was after he finished going to Charlemagne's for the investigation, where he left and he was like, okay, we're gonna have to go during the night and kind of investigate further. So they go home and Sue Smith is there chilling, and then out of the dark in his house there's the Blackstreet Barber assassins show up, and they're here to kill Adamat, and somehow he's able to escape with his life. I think Sue Smith takes one guy and like smashes his whole head into the brick wall.
Yep.
So that's pretty gruesome. And then
you don't want to mess with Sue Smith.
Yeah, Sue Smith will wreck you. He'll give you. You'll have a bad day if you mess with him. And then there's, I think, one of the other. There was 3 of them. One of the other ones got shot by one of his friends, because I think it was really dark, so it's kind of hard to see. And I think one of them gets shot by one of the other Blackstreet Barbers, and then Adamat is able to disarm one of them and basically just starts stabbing him multiple times in the chest. So yeah, this is a pretty gruesome scene, similar on par with like the scene at St. Adam's Festival where people are just getting cut down. This is definitely it's promise of blood, so there's going to be some blood in the book because it was promised to you. So
I mean, it's a gritty, dark story, but you know what? It's really a fun ride. We're reading it for the entertainment value, and we by no means condone killing people with razors or going and breaking and entering into people's houses and killing their families. But it makes for interesting fiction to read.
Yes. And we do live in like a gray world. Like, we don't live in a world that's black and white and always good. So there are bad things that happen in the world, and I think it's good for fiction to depict those type of things so that you can wrestle with them and the morality questions and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's good. And yeah, so there's the assassination attempt, and he's able to escape, and then he goes and confronts the Blackstreet Barbers, and this is where he figures out that it's Charlemagne who's the traitor, because one of the guys basically gives them up after getting, I'm not sure what they did to him exactly. I think they were going to torture him or something, but I think he just gave them up. So I think his name was Teef, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
And wasn't there one named Fingers?
Maybe.
Teeth and Fingers.
So it was Teef as like T-E-E-F. That's how it was spelled.
Oh, okay. Teef. Okay.
Yeah.
When I listened to the book, I thought it was teeth. Like your teeth.
So you had teeth and fingers in the Blackstreet Barbers.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we have a scene with Adamat where he goes back to his house after confronting the Barbers, and this is where Lord Vedas shows up, and he has his daughter with him, and basically just using him as blackmail. And he's basically there to get information on like, did you figure out who the traitor was? Like, what's happening? He's trying to get information on what Tamas is gonna do, because Adamat has told Tamas that Charlemagne is the traitor, and then whenever he leaves and goes back home, Vedas is there, and Vedas is like, okay, what's going on? And so Tamas tells him,
Vitas.
What's that?
Vitas.
Vitas?
Yep. Lord Vitas.
You're probably right. But so he tells Lord Vetus that this is what's happening, and Tamas is going to Charlemagne's to arrest him. And so Vetus doesn't want that to happen, of course, and so he tells somebody to go and warn the
Charlemagne.
to warn Charlemagne that there's going to be a confrontation there. And he leaves like a one guard there for some reason. And, well, which is, it's probably okay because it's just Adamat. And Soothsmith is basically like, he's pretty much incapacitated because he got hurt pretty bad during the assassination attempt. Right?
Yeah,
so
I got shot twice in the stomach.
Yeah.
That's usually a death sentence for most people.
Sure, yeah. But I think Tamas was there and he had a healer come, and so I think he's going to survive, which is good. Because
I love when, like, so they take out the guy, the last one of Vetus's goons, and he like throws him on top of Soothsmith, and Soothsmith just sticks his huge arm around the guy's throat and like chokes him out, and then like, you know, he's recovering from like a double shot to the stomach, and Adamat's like, he's like, you could have warned me, and he's like, oh, you big baby, just don't worry about it. These guys are made of tough stuff.
more Soothsmith, please.
Yep.
Yeah, and so now Adamat feels the need, now that Lord Vetus knows that Tamas is going to Charlemagne, so now Lord Vetus is going to go and help Charlemagne, and so now Adamat gets away, and now he has to go help Tamas, because there's like this whole thing, because now Tamas is going to know that he has, that Adamat has betrayed him, and he's kind of been like a double agent this whole time, and he doesn't really care, because he just wants to help Tamas, and he goes there, and he's trying to find Tamas, and he can't, but he does find, you're going to have to help me on the Simone. That's how I was.
Yeah, Simon.
Simon.
Yep.
So he finds Simon in this carriage, basically just sitting outside the villa, and he realizes it's like a getaway kind of carriage for Charlemagne, and Adamat basically just like appeals to his sense of morality in a way where it's like you're serving this corrupt priest, and you say you're a man of the cloth, like how can you support what he's doing and still serve him in a way? And Simon, he wants to do the right thing, but he also wants to be loyal, so it's like hard for him to like make a decision, but in the end he decides to not drive the carriage whenever Charlemagne asks him to, and unfortunately, Charlemagne kicks him off the carriage and his neck breaks, which seems like a pretty unceremonious death. That's too bad.
Because Simon is like what a priest should be. So just to backtrack, when Adamat arrives at the villa for Charlemagne, you know, he's heard all these rumors about it, and Simon is just like this humble guy who's paying penance. He's got this like 2-year obligation to Charlemagne because he wants to marry his granddaughter, or not his niece. Yep. And he's like, most people are done with this in 6 months. And then we learn like just like how debauched Charlemagne is. Like they say things like he was at the morning orgy, and like, okay, first of all, that no one should be participating in that, let alone a priest. And then there's all these like servants there in like clothing that's revealing, and there just seems to be like, you know, Adamat says like, I've heard about the worst pleasure dens in all of Adro, and this place is even worse than that. And then like Charlemagne allows his guests to have biblical relations with any person on staff. And Simon's in the thick of this, and Simon does what a lot of men and a lot of people just can't, which is he's got this very fidgety nature, and he's always looking down, and they even comment that he's avoiding like feeling lust, and so the only thing he can do is to avert his eyes from all the sexual things going on around him. And like, that is the model of the priest, and he's put in an extreme situation, and he is still finding a way to make himself pure, to make himself be presentable to Charlemagne's niece when he does leave Charlemagne's like the 2-year sentence of like working for him. Yeah, unceremonious death of Simon here, because I mean he was a weird kind of character, like I said, very fidgety, but still he was I think God would have been proud of him to crush those wants of the flesh that were all around him, and to remain pure even in those situations. And the Bible says that like you should try and avoid those situations and not put yourself in them, like, because that will lead to temptation. And he didn't really have a choice, he just kind of had to be in that situation. But I know that it is better to kind of identify, like, if there's something that you're weak in, and like if you know that there's a situation where you might feel lust, it's better just to avoid that situation altogether and not put yourself in that temptation. If you're in a committed relationship and you're like attracted to someone of the opposite sex, like never be alone with that person, like avoid talking to them, because I think that's and Simon just does that throughout the book. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that I think he was doing a good job with his charge there.
So that's basically where we leave Adamat, and I think the question for book 2 is what's going to happen between him and Tamas, because Tamas knows that he's kind of betrayed him in a sense, but he's also done a lot of good things for him, and he kind of was forced to do it because they had captured his family, so it's kind of just a weird situation. But we know that Tamas does not like traitors. He does not like people who go back on their word and betray him, so it'd be interesting to see what happens with that relationship in book 2 for sure. Okay, lastly, we're going to get to Taniel's story. So his basically his whole arc in this book is they're fighting off the Kez invasion over in what is it called? South Pike? No, that's not the right. It's Shoulder Crown Fortress over there. At where Kresimmir's Kruga is.
Kresim Kurga, yep.
Yeah. And so it's basically like this big invasion. They're trying to come up the mountain, and there's, fighting, retreating. It seems very like World War I kind of esque warfare, where there's like trenches and little fortresses dug out. And
Gabriel's like, fix bayonets.
Yeah, it gave me a very like World War I vibes.
Yeah. And it's fun. It was fun to read it, like the shooting into the hand to hand, and it was well written. All the battle scenes, I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, and so basically Taniel has been trying to thin out all of the Kez privileged, because he's using those special bullets that Capol had given him.
The red stripes.
The red stripes, yeah. Which are special because they're able to penetrate the kind of shielding that the privileged will put up to defend themselves. And so they're able to kind of pass through those, unless you're a really powerful privileged. But so he's been trying to take out as many of those as he can. And so they've kind of figured out that the Kez are invading, yes, but Julene, who is kind of leading this army, her ultimate goal isn't really to overrun the Shoulder Crown Fortress. Her ultimate goal is to get up to this place where Kresimir used to live. There's a big city that used to be up there whenever Kresimir was living on the world. And her basic goal is to get up there and to re-summon Kresimir back down to the world, so that he can help them basically take over, I guess, in a sense. I don't know if that's like a good idea, because it seems like Kresimir might just wipe everybody out and he doesn't really care who helped him to get back. But I don't know. I guess we don't really get to find out at the end of this book. We'll get to that in a second. And so yeah, there's basically this scene where they figure out they're digging these tunnels to basically go underneath everything and to kind of get around kind of the fortifications, so they can just go through these tunnels and then get up to the hill, to the very top where they can summon Kresimir back. And so they're basically following them through these tunnels, and they get up to there, and it's like a really hard journey because they're trying to go really fast to catch up with them, but you're going like straight up a mountain, so it's really hard. And there's like a group of them, and they have this guide who's taking them up the mountain to show them where, because he's actually been up there before, and he knows like where the palace is and where they're planning to be. And there's kind of a sense of urgency with this because they have to summon him on the solstice. That's kind of the thing, which is like a particular day, a particular like hour or time period during a particular day. And so they have to get up there really quickly to stop them before this happens. Any thoughts on so far where we're going?
Yeah. So Julene is paired with, I think they're called sappers. Is that the people who are digging underground?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And then so she has to reach the Kresim Kurga with the Cabal, the Kez Cabal, because she by
all
herself, even as a Preti, she is not powerful enough. And then her kind of motivation is that like if she summons Kresimir, like she thinks that he will right the wrongs and then leave her in charge, because she's like basically the person who brought him back, and she's the most powerful, being a Preti. And so she's doing it for power, for herself. And so, and then they said that, certain Preti and powerful people could tap into like the power sources of other planets, and that's why it's tied to the solstice. And yes, there's this urgency, and they pass through the monastery, which we encountered in the first half of the book, and it's destroyed. And the monks are saying that they fought, and they look at all these dead bodies wrapped up, and there's also wardens who have died. So Julene is traveling with the Kez Cabal and wardens, and then there's this whole like mountain lions like tracking everybody and killing and eating each other, and like what is going on here?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, like why is this even a thing? But then they get this guy who's like a double agent. I think they pick him up at the monastery, and he's pretending to be a monk.
Yeah, his name's Del.
Yeah, and he guides them up to the ruined city, which is where Kresimir had touched down as when he came to Earth, and it's a volcano, and it like it created this huge crater inside the volcano, which is where they put the holy city. And then Del kind of leads them to the palace where he thinks Taniel's like, get me to a place where I could shoot, where they're going to summon Kresimir. He's like, okay, I think I know the place. So they like,
because his plan is to kill as many of the privileged so that there's not enough power to summon Kresimir. So that's basically his plan, because they know that they can't defeat all of them, but his only shot is to just take enough of them out so that they can't do what they're trying to do.
Yeah, they're trying to stop. And Bo is with them. It's Bo and one of his lady friends who's like a dog trainer. Yeah. Yep. And so they're all headed up the mountain. And so Del ends up betraying them, leads them straight into the hands of the Kez Cabal.
And Julene.
And I forget exactly how they like escape. Because
I think it has to do with Capol. Capol's got some crazy magics where she's able to like buy Tamas or Taniel some time to get away. Yeah, she's got her she's got her voodoo dolls And she had the dolls of the lion. I remember the scene with the lion where she like smashed the doll of the lion's head, and the lion's actual head just like exploded. Yeah. So it's like, it was, again, pretty gruesome book, but yeah, it's like straight up, it's basically just straight up voodoo magic is what she's doing. She's using these dolls as like representations of the physical being that she is trying to attack,
control and manipulate.
Yeah,
dude, there's a scene, and I forget if it's in the second or third book, where she does something with the dolls. It is just, it's awesome. I can't wait to reread that scene. Like, it's so good. Yeah, anyway, so Taniel sees the most beautiful man descending from the clouds, and it's Kresimir, and it's an impossible shot. It's like 6 miles away. It's not something close. Like, he can, earlier in the book it's described that he can shoot the hat off of a guy 3 miles away on a windy day. Yeah. First of all, if you are shooting in a windy condition, like any sort of distance, like getting a perfect shot is like nearly impossible. So
yeah,
like doing it at 3 miles is just like crazy. And so like it just describes him like taking his 2 red shots, shoving them down the barrel, aiming and shooting, and then him just like burning through a whole like powder keg or powder horn of stuff just to try and keep them afloat. Like, I feel like his nose is like gushing blood. He's like focusing so hard, and he's battling that addiction to the powder trance, and like he ends up shooting Kresimir like in the
through the eye and through the heart. That's what it's
through the heart with his 2 charges, and it's just like, oh. And then apparently all across the world, all the privilege felt the death of Kresimir, like not the powder mages, not the Nact, but just the privilege. So somehow there's a connection.
And the pretty, I would assume.
Yeah, and the pretty too. And we talked about this before the podcast. It just kind of like comes as like a head cocking moment. Like, wait, really? Like,
is that it?
Like, we've been like going through this book, and like like he's gonna summon Kresimir. There's gonna be a god summoned to this plane of existence, and then all of a sudden, like, we shoot him, and now he's like crumpled and he's dead on the ground, and like you thought like he was gonna like come and bring all his supernatural powers to bear and like take people out, and he's dead, and you're just like, what? Like, how did that happen? So definitely a surprising moment in the book, and
it just doesn't seem very godlike to just get shot by 2 bullets and then be done, And then, because like earlier in the book, like some of the Pretty had been shot multiple times by Taniel, and like it didn't take them out. So it seems like there's like, either there's something that we're going to find out in book 2 where we didn't really get the whole story. I don't know. It's just, I agree. It seemed kind of like anticlimactic in a way, where it was like, it would have been really cool if, he had made this shot and then like he kind of crumpled, but then there was like this massive burst of energy and like he came back to life. Like, he didn't actually die. Like, he was able to, show off his power in some way. It just makes Kresimir seem kind of lame, that he just got killed from 6 miles away by 2 little musket bullets. I don't know. Yeah, it just seemed kind of odd, but I don't know. It's
all I will say is there's more to come.
I assume that it is a trilogy, right? So there's 2 more books after this. So I assume that some of the other, I think it might be, we can just jump into like kind of final thoughts and book 2 kind of predictions and stuff. So how about this? Let's just do, I don't know if we could, should we start rating books? I don't know if I really like rating books.
No,
I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I'll say that.
Okay.
If you want to see my rating, you can do 4 stars on Goodreads. But I thought it was a good book. I really just enjoyed kind of like, there's a lot of action. I really just enjoy, I love reading like the first book in a series just to kind of get all of the different, world building and like how the magic system works and all the different characters and the political system. And like this book has a lot of that kind of stuff. It's got some interesting magic, some cool world building, a lot of political stuff, some good action. It just kind of has like a little bit of everything. And also like the unique time period really does do it a lot of justice, just kind of putting you in a really interesting place and interesting time, and how they weave the magic in with kind of the industrial, like early gunpowder kind of era. So I thought it was just a really cool series, or first book at least. And yeah, I'm looking forward to certainly reading the next 2 books in this trilogy. And I think there's also a second trilogy as well.
And it takes place in Fatrasta. So this is all mostly in Adro and on the continent.
Yeah, so Capol is from Fatrasta, if I remember correctly.
Right. She is of Dionysian descent. That's the red hair and stuff. But she was living in Fatrasta, which is kind of like a swampland. I kind of equate it to like, I feel like America, like Kez has sent their powers over there and they're trying to colonize, but then there's a rebellion and they get kicked out, and now Fatrasta's on their own, making their own kind of country, and there's like native, like a quote unquote Native American people there, and that's all in the second trilogy, which takes place I think a decade after this trilogy, but yeah, so I'll just jump into my thoughts. I like reading Brian McClellan. I like his characters. I like the action. I like how so many people are angry in the book. Just like Nyla's angry. And I just like how gritty all the people are. And like they're all a little superhuman. Like Sue Smith got shot twice in the stomach, and he's still like strangling people to death on the couch. Even though he's in a...
He is an act though. He's got some magical prowess.
Is he an act?
Yeah, I thought he was an act. That's why he's such a good boxer or fighter or whatever. I thought he had something. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's just a tough guy. I don't know.
I think he's just a bare knuckle boxer. And everyone's just so like gritty. Like Tamas is like mad at so many people. He's mad at Nick Slaus. He's mad at his counselors, and I just like. And I like that Tamas is, like they said, like a just guy. Like, you can get behind Tamas. Like, you may not agree with his ways, which is that, like, you are not pure, but, like, you're rooting for Tamas, even though he's, like... And then, like, you get to see that softer side of Tamas. Like, he didn't execute anyone. Oh, yeah, just real quick, we need to state this because it's important. Well, I won't... I'll say it after your predictions. Oh, you got to remind me. I'm going to say it. All right.
Okay.
All right. Nyla is going to kill Tamas. And then Olam pulls her aside. This is right when she breaks up with him and shows him the little boy, Duke Elderman's son, Jakob. And she can't kill Tamas anymore because Tamas has not killed anyone who was under 17. He just sent them off to live lives away from nobility so that they can't come back and try and claim ownership. And then Lord Vitas shows up and he has captured Jakob and he has killed Jakob's nurse, and Nyla's there, and Lord Vitas like grabs her and shakes her and is like, "What does he mean to you? Like, tell me right now." And you get, like, he's kind of breaking that very cold, like calculating demeanor. He's being really rough and aggressive with her, and she's like, "I can make a run for it." And then she sees Jakob and he's like, "Nyla, I've missed you so much. It's so good to see you." And then she's like, "I had this terrible feeling that if I got in the car with Vitas that I would never, be free again." And that's where her storyline's in, going off with Jakob and Lord Vitas. So even though Tamas is a gritty character and he's killed thousands of people, like, you still want to get behind him, and like the magic system is so fun. I really like reading these books. Like I said, they are gory, they are not for everyone, they talk about blood and death, and but it really scratches an itch for me. I can't say that it's not fun to read these books. definitely, if you were an adult considering this for a younger kid, preview the
read
book
it, but read it before you give it to them. Yeah.
Yeah, do not just say, yeah, I enjoy that, unless you're that way. Some people are just like, yeah. I know that I grew up in a family where I was watching rated R movies in like 3rd grade, which who knows what that's done to my psyche. But I battled my way back and found my moral compass again. That's all I will say. All right,
That's
so
good
now, now I get to I will pursue the smirking that you told me that would happen now. So, Tyler, aka Vera, why don't you tell us about the predictions on book 2 that you think will happen?
Well, one thing I'll say is I hope we get some new like viewpoint characters, because it was mainly Tamas, Adamat, and Taniel. I'm sure those characters will continue in this, but I hope we get, because we really didn't have a lot of like other viewpoint characters besides Nyla. I think that was basically all of them, and we only really had the small little interludes with Nyla. I think it might be cool to have other viewpoints of like maybe somebody in the Kez world. I think it might be cool to have a viewpoint from Valora, Tamas's previously betrothed, or whatever. Her as a character, I think she's kind of interesting.
Previously betrothed.
Yeah, well, I always mix them up. Crazy.
Yeah, Taniel and Tamas. Yeah, it's tough.
But yeah, so hopefully we'll get something like that, or at least like more information about those characters. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just interested to see what happens with like all of the Kresimir stuff. Like, it just seems weird to me that it would just be like he's getting summoned and then no, he's not. That's it. The storyline's over. So I'm just interested to see what's going to be kind of the main thrust of the second book, because you don't have like the threat of Kresimir anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
Which was kind of the main thing in this book. So, yeah, we have the whole battle with the Kez. I assume there's going to be some kind of war between those two factions. And yeah, Tamas is still alive, so he's going to be kind of leading that whole army and seeing what happens with that. I'm sure there'll be some crazy stuff that will happen in that whole war. I'm interested to learn more about Kapol and her magic. You mentioned some of her crazy magics in some of the other books. So yeah, just really interested to see kind of more background on her. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go on the ship train with Taniel and Kapol. Hope they might be a good relationship couple, unless Valora can kind of get Taniel's forgiveness for doing what she had done to him at the beginning of the book. I did read, I don't know if this was in the audiobook, but in the paperback copy at the end there's an unreleased prologue that had a scene with Valora and that like first scene where Taniel catches them sleeping together.
Oh no, that is not something that I've read before, and I've
I might have to. If next time I see you, I can give you the book and you can read that little prologue, which is
that'd be cool.
It's not super long. It's like maybe 2 pages or something, but it just kind of gives you the perspective of the person that she cheated on Taniel with. And it's a guy named Flemmer, something like that. He basically gets like paid by somebody to seduce her, and you don't really know. I don't think it mentioned who it was, but so there might be something interesting with that, like who was the person who paid her or paid him to seduce her. So maybe there's some like conniving with like the Kez trying to get Taniel off his rocker. I don't know. This book has a lot of political intrigue, so I'm interested to see like more of that kind of stuff play out. Yeah, I don't know.
Your predictions are pretty good.
Yeah,
you will get some of the things that you requested. I will say that.
That's good. I can live with that.
Yep. You.
I'm gonna. Yep. I thought of this whenever I was reading. I'm curious if Tamas's wife is actually dead. No, it's something I just thought about. I don't know if that's true or I'm justified in saying that, but that it might be interesting if
Erica.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting if she was still alive and she was like the one behind a lot of the stuff happening, or like pulling the strings.
Ooh, a mastermind.
Mastermind, yeah. That might be completely not true, but it sounds like an interesting storyline. Faked death and betrayer of his wife, her husband. That might be interesting.
Mm-hmm. The second
all I
book
got.
is called The Crimson Campaign.
Crimson Campaign. Sounds
The
like a war
Hound-
book.
Yeah, and so the little quote on the front of it says, just reading this, "The hounds at our heels will soon know we are lions."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's similar to "The age of kings is dead, and I have killed it."
Yeah, just like that kind of quote for Tamas. Yeah. I think that crazy carpole magic, I can't remember if it's in this book or in the second book or in the third book. But that scene is really, really cool. Carpole is, you will find out that Carpole is crazy powerful.
She sounds
really good.
She sounds pretty powerful. So.
Yeah, she's just getting into it. She's learning her way and doing new things. It's really cool.
All right, that's all I got for predictions. And yeah, I think that's gonna do it for the podcast. What am I doing? What am I talking about? Yeah, next episode we're gonna be doing. So as of recording this, I'm supposed to have my first child here in a week or so. So.
Daddy Verum.
Yeah,
Woo-hoo!
So that's going to be exciting. So this episode will be these two Promise of Blood episodes will be during February. So hopefully when after these two go up, I'll have time to get another one recorded for March, and the plan is to do Dune Messiah. That's going to be our next book. So yeah,
and it's a shorter book.
It is pretty short. It's like 200 pages or something. So it's not that bad of a read. So hopefully we can get that done and recorded. Maybe we'll only do one episode on that. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see what happens with that. So, but sure. I mean, this book is 500 something pages, and I think both of these episodes are like really long, like longer than our normal episodes. So,
I am at an hour and 50 minutes on my recording.
I'm at almost 2 hours recording. So yeah, we'll see what happens with I feel like the longer we do the podcast, the more like we come up and have to say about things, or maybe we're just getting better at like picking things out of the books. I don't know, but I really feel
like God showed up to this episode. I feel like I felt like we both made points that God wanted us to make for our listeners to hear and to challenge their thought processes and to question themselves. So it's good. It's going to help somebody. It's going to help at least one person. At least one.
At least one. That's right.
all we need. Change the life of one person just a little bit.
Indeed. And if you were that person that it changed your life, we're very happy about that. We're going to pray for you, and we hope that you share the podcast with somebody else. And if everybody shares it, then we'll double our listenership in one day.
We said it before. All we need is you to share it with just one.
Share it with one person. Yes, if you want more Pages of Light content, you can go to our website, pagesoflight.com, and also make sure you go over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. I'd really like to grow the channel more, doing some more videos, podcasts, all sorts of things. So go subscribe over on YouTube. You can also go on Facebook, Instagram, and on Goodreads if you want to see what's coming up for the podcast. I have a Goodreads shelf that's called Pages of Light Podcast, where you can see kind of the books coming up of what we're planning to read. So we're going to plan to do Mistborn, the first Mistborn trilogy, this year as well. And we'll see what happens later on in the year. You can follow Gabe at neighborhoodnerdservices.com, see what he's doing, helping people with their technology needs. And links for all of those things will be in the description, of course. And you can also find a link to buy the book Promise of Blood down there as well. I would highly recommend it. Pretty good read. And yeah, If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review on your podcast app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you're listening, and helps the podcast grow and more people find it. And yeah, any last thoughts, Gabe?
Come back next time, everybody.
Yeah, come back next time, and we'll see you in the next episode for Dune Messiah. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening. Remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.